You're about to discover the dark secrets the Olympics don't want you to know. At least 18 athletes and workers have died pursuing Olympic dreams, and the causes will shock you. One competitor covered his entire body in beef fat thinking it would help him win, leading to an unimaginable death. Another was launched into the air at 87 miles per hour by a malfunctioning sled. A cyclist collapsed from a drug-enhanced body unable to handle extreme heat. And construction workers were crushed, fell from heights, and buried alive building venues for global sporting spectacles. These aren't accidents. They're preventable tragedies that exposed systemic failures, ignored warnings, and the brutal price of Olympic ambition. But before you judge, you need to understand what actually happened during these moments that changed Olympic history forever. Stay with us as we uncover the truth behind Olympic tragedies that still haunt the sporting world today.
The Summer Games in Stockholm witnessed an unprecedented tragedy on July 14, 1912. Francisco Lazaro, a 21-year-old carpenter competing for Portugal, arrived at the starting line for the marathon having trained in his country's temperate conditions. That afternoon, the Swedish landscape became unforgiving. Temperatures soared to 90 degrees Fahrenheit paired with thick humidity, transforming the 26-mile route into a brutal test of endurance across hot pavement and dust clouds. Before the race began, Lazaro made a fateful choice. Believing he could shield himself from the intense sun, he applied a thick coating of beef fat and wax to his entire body. This decision, intended for protection, instead trapped his skin beneath a waterproof seal that prevented natural cooling through perspiration. As the field of 69 runners set out, Lazaro started cautiously, running alongside athletes from Sweden, Finland, and South Africa. The early portions progressed without major incident, but as competitors moved deeper into the Swedish terrain, the sun's intensity grew unbearable. By the midway point, multiple runners had succumbed to heat exhaustion and withdrew. Lazaro pressed forward despite showing visible signs of physical breakdown. His breath grew shallow and moisture accumulated beneath his hardened protective layer, unable to escape. Near the 18.6-mile marker, observers noted his disorientation and unsteady gait, classic indicators of dangerous heat-related illness. With approximately 5 miles left to run, Lazaro collapsed suddenly on the dusty road near Södertälje. Those who rushed to help found him unconscious and radiating extreme body heat, his skin gray and damp beneath liquefied wax. Swedish medical teams transported him to Serafimer Hospital in Stockholm, where physicians attempted intensive cooling treatments. Unfortunately, Lazaro never regained awareness, succumbing to heat stroke and severe dehydration the following morning. His death marked the first athlete fatality during an Olympic competition, ultimately prompting organizers to establish critical safety measures including mandatory water distribution stations and systematic temperature management for future marathon events. At the 2010 Winter Games in Vancouver, tragedy struck on February 12 during pre-competition preparations. Nodar Kumaritashvili, a 21-year-old Georgian luger following in his father's and uncle's competitive footsteps, was executing a practice run on the Whistler Sliding Center just hours before the opening ceremony. The Whistler facility held an ominous reputation as the planet's fastest and most treacherous sliding track, with speeds regularly surpassing 93 miles per hour along its 4,480-foot length. During the preparatory training sessions, multiple athletes experienced crashes and equipment damage. Italian competitor Armin Zergler had voiced public concerns about the track's excessive speed and dangerous design. Romanian athlete Violeta Stramaru sustained a concussion after losing directional control, and numerous others reported significant accidents. At 4:44 p.m., Tashvili launched his sled from the men's starting position, accelerating face-up down the frozen course. The initial turns proceeded normally as his velocity climbed. By the most demanding section, he was traveling approximately 90 miles per hour, typical for skilled competitors at this level. As he approached turn 15, commonly called 50-50, his sled began behaving erratically. Camera footage captured his sled drifting leftward toward the outer banking. Attempting correction with right leg pressure, his adjustment proved both delayed and excessive. The sled suddenly launched upward along turn 16's banking, projecting Tashvili through the air like a projectile at over 87 miles per hour. he impacted a metal support structure holding timing equipment, suffering catastrophic head and chest injuries. Medical personnel arrived quickly to attempt resuscitation, but the trauma proved unsurvivable. Tashvili was declared deceased at Whistler Healthcare Center at 5:50 p.m. In response, track administrators immediately implemented substantial modifications, including reinforced walls and enhanced padding surrounding all metal infrastructure. During the 1992 Albertville Winter Games, February 22 brought disaster to speed skiing. Nicolas Boucher, a 27-year-old Swiss athlete, was preparing for a demonstration event showcasing extreme skiing disciplines where participants reach velocities exceeding 125 miles per hour. That morning, Boucher chose to enjoy a relaxed recreational run on standard slopes, separate from the specialized speed skiing venue. Rather than wearing high-performance speed skiing equipment, he selected conventional alpine skiing gear, treating the session as a casual training warm-up. External conditions were favorable. Clear skies and excellently maintained slopes presented no obvious hazards. Around 10:30 a.m., while descending an intermediate-level slope, Boucher encountered an unexpected obstacle, a snow grooming vehicle actively working to maintain slope conditions. These enormous machines, weighing multiple tons and equipped with powerful engines and wide track systems, regularly operate on slopes for maintenance purposes. What transpired next remains somewhat ambiguous in its exact mechanics, but witnesses indicated that Boucher either lost control or miscalculated his trajectory as he approached the vehicle. Whether from a momentary lapse in attention, mechanical equipment failure, or a simple miscalculation, he could not avoid the massive machinery. At his speed, even on a less challenging slope, there was insufficient time to execute avoidance maneuvers once danger became apparent. Boucher struck the rear of the grooming vehicle with tremendous force, sustaining injuries of such severity that death was instantaneous. Resort personnel and medical responders arrived promptly, but the damage precluded any possibility of survival. The incident reverberated through the Olympic and skiing communities, resulting in enhanced safety protocols for demonstration competitions and more comprehensive guidelines governing interactions between athletes and resort operations. At the 1960 Rome Games, August 26 marked a somber distinction, the first Olympic athlete death attributed to pharmaceutical misuse. Knud Mark Jensen, a 23-year-old Danish cyclist, participated in the 62-mile team time trial beneath scorching Italian sun with air temperatures reaching 104 degrees. As part of Denmark's four-person cycling squad, Jensen had been using RNL, a circulation-enhancing substance that was permitted at that time but subsequently prohibited due to its risky properties, particularly when combined with intense physical activity and extreme heat. Endurance athletes commonly employed this medication, trusting it would enhance performance through improved circulatory function, though its conduct under high-temperature circumstances remained poorly documented. At 2 p.m., the Danish team commenced their race from Term toward Caracalla, with Jensen taking rotational turns at the front while managing the demanding course through the Roman landscape. The team format required all four members to maintain collaborative high-speed efforts across the full 62-mile distance. For the initial hour, Jensen appeared to manage the environment adequately, taking his turns in the lead rotation and maintaining the rapid pace demanded by Olympic-level competition. However, as afternoon heat intensified and fatigue accumulated, Jensen exhibited clear distress that his teammates misinterpreted as typical racing exhaustion. His pedaling rhythm deteriorated, and he found it increasingly difficult to sustain his frontrunner position. At the 54-mile point with 8 miles remaining, Jensen's condition had noticeably worsened. His teammates observed his weaving trajectory and apparent confusion but encouraged continuation rather than recognizing developing physiological emergency. By the 5-mile mark, Jensen lost consciousness while pedaling, falling to the hot road surface. His teammates and race officials halted immediately to provide assistance, discovering him unconscious with unmistakable heat-related crisis symptoms, dangerously elevated body temperature and irregular, labored breathing. Italian medical personnel rushed Jensen to a Rome medical facility where doctors applied aggressive cooling protocols and stabilization efforts. Despite these interventions, Jensen succumbed hours later to heat stroke intensified by the pharmaceutical stimulant. Medical examination revealed that the combination of RNAL, environmental heat, and physical exertion had overwhelmed his body's thermal regulation mechanisms, ultimately initiating substantial discussions regarding Olympic pharmaceutical testing. January 25, 1964, brought tragedy to the Innsbruck Winter Games. Ross Mill, a 19-year-old Australian downhill skier from Sydney, was training on the Olympic downhill course at Patrick Coffell Mountain in advance of the game's opening. Mill represented one of Australia's emerging skiing talents despite minimal access to world-class training locations and snow conditions in his home country. He had traveled early to acclimate to European racing environments and become familiar with the challenging Olympic course. The Patrick Coffell downhill possessed formidable technical demands and high speeds, featuring a vertical descent exceeding 2,850 feet with numerous sections where racers routinely approached 81 miles per hour. Sharp turns and dramatic elevation changes required exceptional technique and precise execution. During his training run at competitive velocity, Mill encountered a particularly complex turn sequence demanding precise line selection and expert control. Firm, fast snow conditions, typical for World Cup-level racing, provided no forgiveness for technical mistakes. As Mill entered a sharp left turn at high speed, something malfunctioned with either his skis or technique, resulting in lost directional control. At Olympic downhill racing, the tolerance for error essentially disappears. Once a skier loses control at racing speeds, recovery becomes virtually impossible. Video evidence showed Mill fighting to regain control as his trajectory deviated from the intended racing line. Attempting to redirect his skis, he was pulled off the prepared course into the forested perimeter. Traveling at approximately 62 miles per hour, the collision with trees proved devastating. Mill struck numerous substantial pine trees in succession, sustaining injuries that caused instantaneous death. Ski patrol and medical teams reached the scene within minutes, but the force of impact rendered survival impossible. The incident prompted the Olympic community to enhance downhill safety protocols, implementing expanded safety distances between racing lines and hazards, reinforced protective barriers, and more thorough course assessment procedures, many of which remain standard practices in modern international ski racing. While competition itself has claimed lives, Olympic venue construction has created an equally tragic human toll. The Athens 2004 and Rio 2016 games stand out for their particularly devastating construction-related fatalities. In Athens, compressed timelines to complete facilities created hazardous working circumstances. On March 15, 2004, several months before the games commenced, Dimitrios Antonopoulos, age 45, was working on the Olympic Stadium roof when supporting cables failed. He plummeted 100 feet to his death while mounting lighting fixtures. Years of governmental bureaucratic delays had forced contractors into accelerated work schedules, with laborers frequently working 16-hour daily shifts without adequate rest and consistent safety protocol violations. Additional deaths followed. On June 2, 2004, Nikos Georgiou, a 38-year-old crane operator, perished when his crane collapsed while hoisting steel components for the aquatic facility. Operating beyond its rated capacity due to schedule pressures and insufficient ground preparation, the massive equipment tipped over, fatally crushing Georgiou inside the operator compartment. At minimum, 4 construction workers died in Athens' Olympic venue preparation, with numerous others sustaining significant injuries. Rio 2016 surpassed even this tragedy. Brazilian authorities confirmed at least 11 construction worker deaths directly related to Olympic venue development. On March 27, 2013, Anderson Dilva Santos was positioning concrete forms at Olympic Park when a crane failed during high winds, killing Santos and injuring 4 additional workers. The 440,000-pound crane operated under wind speeds surpassing safety thresholds due to schedule pressure. April 3, 2014, claimed 2 additional lives when the Adair Stadium roof section collapsed during installation. Fabio Luis Pereira and Ronaldo Oliver dos Santos were crushed beneath falling concrete and steel due to inadequate structural support systems. Most devastatingly, April 21, 2016, saw an elevated bicycle path over Guanabara Bay designed for Olympic cycling competitions collapse into the ocean, killing 2 individuals. Investigators discovered systematic deficiencies including substandard materials, insufficient safety instruction, and widespread corner cutting driven by financial and scheduling pressures. These construction casualties illustrated the human expense of hosting Olympic competitions and ultimately resulted in strengthened international oversight of construction project safety standards.